So today we're talking with Citron about ODM XML, which is a new technology, at least new for us, for creating data, well-structured data from instruments. So Cy, would you explain exactly what is ODM? What does ODM stand for?
No, ODM stands for Operational Data Model from COBAS, and what it is it's a set of schema, they call it, which is rules for the XML language. Now, XML is a markup language not too different than HTML. Most people know about HTML because they view a website and the markup language draws out the information. XML is specifically for data, and what we're concerned about is how do we manage and transfer data using XML. In this case, using ODM as a model instead of our own homegrown XML. It's like coming up with your own language is what has happened instead of using the standard language. Like if you were to speak to an organization in another country, the standard language may be English, so people would understand. So in essence, COBAS tries to come up with a standard metadata language, a language for data, in this case the ODM model, and we can be communicating, relating to data in a standard way and understanding the meaning of that.
So what you mentioned COBAS. What's COBAS?
COBAS is an industry-wide consortium that establishes the standards. So they work with the FDA in terms of planning to make this a regulation, a law in the future, but right now it's a guideline that companies would use to follow those as across different companies as an industry standard for delivering data in the ODM XML model. Another point related to that is that all the software vendors, in this example, SAS Institute for the Analysis and Oracle from a database side, they have support for and modules and technologies for this ODM data model. So we're leveraging on tools that exist in big vendors already, and including the other smaller tools too, and we're not reinventing the wheel when coming to creating the structure. So that's how it goes.
And was that true? I mean, we do a large variety of things. We come up with a new test with new kinds of output for new kinds of genetic information. That's going to be able to be standardized by this model, even though we might be sort of the first in the world doing a certain kind of test.
That's a good question. The original ODM model, there are some strict rules. You have to follow and abide by these rules. But one aspect of it is part of XML itself. The X stands for extendability, and the ML just stands for markup language. But in our case, if we're doing something unique and beyond what the original model was established for, we can extend it, we can add to it. What we can't do is go back and change the core of it and break the grammar rules, schema rules. But we can extend and build upon it so other medical devices possibly can use the same. Or maybe ours is so unique that we would just have that part of it within our own domain. They have these different data domains, and we can create a new domain specifically for our instruments. But it's an extension upon a core standard. It isn't creating a brand new language from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing that sounds like it would be very favorable for R&D work, because certainly throughout the course of any development program, things change and often change a lot as you begin to specify and implement software and hardware and all of the chemistry related things that come with our quite complex products. So to have a data structure that you can add to, especially maybe in the middle of a program, and not have to redo everything again because of the new change, that sounds like a real favorable situation.
Another thing it adds is that there's a series of suggestions on how to add. So if you were to create a new data domain with new columns, there are certain guidelines as to what you should name that and how there's certain standards already. So if it matches another domain you can borrow from. So it isn't coming up completely brand new, it's leveraging upon a set of standard naming conventions, for example. So it is extendable, but still falling within the same standards.
And if you follow those, you're saying there are existing tools in Oracle and SAS and other things where you basically can read those files without... Would this avoid having to write custom input programs?
It would. SAS, as an example, has a live name engine. You create a name that refers to a physical hard drive or location disk somewhere, and then it pulls the data in. And that location and file could be Excel, it could be Oracle, it could be other sources, and ODM is one of those. So all you do is point it to where the data is located via a library name, and SAS, if it's structured as ODM, it will pull everything in and create a SAS data set out of it. So it does help a lot in terms of import and possibly export as well in this data standard. Right now what's happening is we have to write custom code parsing each column and trying to understand the metadata, the meaning of each one, and then bring it into SAS before we can work with it. So that could lead to errors and not very efficient, and it's a lot of work. Whereas the ODM, there's an established SAS engine that just imports it.
Now, another important aspect when it comes to R&D projects, because usually, with any large-scale project comes many different tools that have to be put in place to do the day-to-day technical work. So if a standardized format like this allows use of essentially off-the-shelf tools right out of the box, then that's another important consideration. Well, can you speak a little bit about security aspects? Certainly one of the things that is a challenge, and I'm thinking internally, not so much of externally at this point, but during development programs, there's a lot of data sharing, information exchange. There's the need to know where data came from, so it can be traced to its source, and then it's handed off for other types of processing. So data integrity is always a key consideration for us. How does ODM kind of speak to that or help with those types of challenges?
ODM is originally designed for operational databases to capture the information. So this is initially designed as a clinical trial, collecting information from a hospital site. So it's a little different, but it can be adapted to devices. But the way it works is that, let's say in the hospital site, a doctor makes a change because on the original record, the age was incorrectly entered or something like that. Now, ODM has the ability to indicate on that date, Dr. Green changed this value, what was the original value, what was it changed to, what site it was located. So those types of things, it's actually a basic concept of relational database for operational database. But the data model captures all that as well. So what it allows us is a complete audit trail of any information directly in the data model. So during an audit, if the FDA said, there's something wrong right at this point, what happened, where did it come from? Easily within the data that we have, we know the exact history from its source, when it was changed, how, at what time, and by who at what site. So those types of things will help the data integrity is built into the data model itself.
And this, so I guess this could apply sort of across the Roche instrument world. I mean, we're not constrained to molecular here, right? This works chemistry or hematology, and it's just a matter of having different domains. Is that how
That's
it works?
right. The model has a core set of domains. In the clinical space, it could be things like adverse events and demographics and things like that. In our space, we can create our own domains, and then if another device or another life cycle is developed, we can extend and create a different domain. In essence, the core of each domain has some key columns or fields that are the same, but then you add new ones to handle that domain. And the way that standards work is that all those new domains get proposed or submitted back to COBAS. COBAS evaluates, and they decide which one will work best for the next version. So it's like a dictionary, so it's constantly growing with new vocabulary. So the next year's release will encompass new domains. So in time, the goal is to have enough domains to service everybody. But of course, it's still early in development, so we can establish some of those domains.
So we touched on a little bit on kind of the regulatory elements to this. Is ODM something that, you know, global regulatory bodies, and certainly an example being the FDA, that they're aware of it now, or are they recommending it? Do they even use it for certain things right now? How is that, what's the current status of that?
They're working very closely with COBAS. In all the COBAS, I'm a member of the COBAS group. In all the COBAS meeting, there's an FDA representative, and they're constantly requesting, this is what we like to see as being submitted. And they're at the point where they're wanting to push it towards becoming a regulated law. Right now, it's still a guideline, and they're doing an analysis to see how much impact it has on the industry. They don't want it to affect the production, but they do want for us to move towards this. So they're very involved, and they want to push this towards becoming a new FDA regulation. But still, they're still working it as a standard guideline.
So it sounds like it's the early phases of that now, so
Right.
to become more and more educated on this probably is in our best interest already, it sounds like.
It is. There's one point in terms of the FDA, as you can see here, what our goal is to create the data set that we submit to the FDA. What's interesting is the instruments themselves from the sites initially has an XML data, and it gets moved into the various groups that process it. And now each group has their own format. It sometimes goes to CSV, some Excel, and sometimes in other formats. And then finally it goes back to the XML that we want to submit. So instead of all of those different format changes, if we were to implement this, the original data coming out of the instrument is very close to what we're planning to submit. And all the other users could add to it and analyze it, but it still retains the core. That would streamline the process a lot. And right now we're going through a lot of transformations from the source, not only file types, but structure as well, until we get to the submission. But with this model, we start out getting the source looking like what we wanted to submit, and then analyze it and do other things, and then in the end include that original part along with other things for the submission. So that helps streamline it.
Yeah, definitely.
But that doesn't preclude using Excel, which a lot of people like, right? I mean, you have, once the data comes to the development or internal analysts, they are free to use whatever tool they want, right? This isn't going to restrict sort of the analysis software? Or is
I don't
it-
think so. Excel, as an example, in the previous version, the extension is XLS. And in their latest version, XLSX, the X stands for XML. So in essence, the new Excel is an XML file particular to Microsoft. So in itself, it can import this ODM and view it like an Excel spreadsheet. People can work at it. The idea here is to retain that standard initially, and then after we process it through Excel, as an example, and export it, it will still retain that structure. So it doesn't preclude any tools, but hopefully retain the standard structure going through the tools.
Or we could go from ODM XML to Oracle or SAS, and then back to XML.
That's
would
right.
be another way of doing
Mhm.
our work, say, in the middle there.
It's true. The ODM data set, if you will, table, could move and become an Oracle table at one point, could become an Excel file or a SAS data set, but in the end then it gets exported back to the ODM XML. The goal is that if it's the end product is similar to the original, there's less transformation and less effort. But during the processing, it could be used in different formats.
So what's a good way for people to learn more about this? I mean, is there a particular organization? I mean, you mentioned CDISC. I mean, if people are interested in getting the details on this and wanted to learn more and maybe see examples of applications of this, what would be a good way to find out that information?
The CDISC.org website is available, and the nice thing is the majority of the information is free. There is a form that you fill out so they know who is accessing this information. All the guidelines are freely downloadable, and all the example data models, you can download an example, and it's completely available through the website, the COBAS website. And the majority of the information are format in PDF or the example XML files, or even Excel files for some information, but it's freely available at COBAS.
Okay, excellent.
Thanks for joining us on this COBAS discussion. My name is Sai Trung. I'm the systems analyst here within Pleasanton in RMS.
Hi, I'm Mike Santulli. I'm head of the biometrics group at RMS.
Hi, I'm John Nunes. I'm a senior director in the development department here in Pleasanton and head of system development for this site. Thanks for listening and for joining us.